is Dorothy Harris, and I'm 68 years old. People like to say that old age is when your children will love you more and take care of you. But I had to stand in the middle of my own son's wedding and swallow pure humiliation when the bride, my daughter-in-law, turned me into a joke, as if I were just an old woman clinging to family to survive. Maybe that moment stripped away the last bit of pride I had, but at the same time, it lit a fire in me. I wanted to keep my dignity, to protect everything I've spent my life building. I didn't just want to be respected as a mother. I wanted to prove that age is not an excuse for anyone to strip away my right to live freely. And then, the unthinkable happened. Just 2 days after the wedding, that brand new daughter-in-law showed up at my house with a legal officer, papers in hand, ready to send me straight to a nursing home, as if I'd become excess baggage. But they didn't know. I, Dorothy Harris, am not the kind of woman who yields so easily. Before we go on, please subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, share this story, and leave a comment where you're listening. Because my story isn't just a family tragedy. It's a journey to reclaim my voice, my dignity, and justice. So, let's rewind to that fateful moment, the wedding reception where everything began to fall apart. The church that day looked like a postcard. Stained glass windows washed the wooden floor in shades of purple, red, and blue. And the choir sang the same hymn I'd heard 35 years ago on my own wedding day. Standing in that familiar scene, I couldn't help but shiver. I once dreamed of a happy future in this very church. Today I returned not as a bride, but as an old mother, handing my only son to another woman. Michael, my son, looked happier than ever. He wore a perfectly fitted tuxedo, his eyes sparkling like a 5-year-old boy getting his first bicycle. Beside him, Amanda, the bride, wore a dazzling white gown. I wanted to believe that glow was love, that this woman would cherish my son and the family he came from. I had poured everything I had into that day, $12,000, money it took me years to save through frugal meals, long walks to the supermarket to save on gas, and countless times saying no to myself. It was my retirement, my final safety net, but I gave it without complaint, believing that love deserved to begin with a beautiful day. The wedding unfolded like a dream. I didn't know how quickly dreams can turn into nightmares. The reception was held at an upscale club. Guests raised their glasses, music swelled, laughter filled the room. I tried to enjoy the moment, though unease tugged at me. Something in Amanda's eyes made me wary, an intent behind the sugary smile. Michael stood first, lifted his champagne, and spoke with a voice trembling from emotion. He thanked everyone, thanked his new wife, and especially thanked me for always being there for him. The room applauded. I looked up at my son, pride tangled with pain, because even as he thanked me, I knew he'd never truly understood what I'd sacrificed. Then it was Amanda's turn. She rose, her dress glittering under the lights, smiling as if the ballroom were her own stage. Her voice carried through the room, so sweet it sent a chill down my spine. "I want to say a few words about my mother-in-law," Amanda began. "Mrs. Dorothy Harris has lived with us for months now, and I've learned so much from her about sacrifice, about loyalty in a family." My chest warmed. Maybe I'd misjudged her. Maybe she truly appreciated me. I nodded slightly, letting a small hope rise. But Amanda didn't stop there. "She's given us not just love, but financial support," she continued, her tone rising as if she were dispensing a great truth. That's what a real mother does, gives everything for her children's happiness. A smattering of applause broke out, but I heard the whispers. I felt the guests' eyes skim over me, pitying, confused. They didn't see a devoted mother. They saw an old woman dependent on her children, someone who couldn't manage on her own. My face burned. Everything I'd done, every dollar I'd scraped together for this wedding, had become a prop for Amanda to turn me into a punchline. In that moment, I understood her praise wasn't to honor me, but to diminish me. A neat little performance, with me as the pathetic character in the bride's script. I tried to smile, but my lips trembled. I heard the clink of cutlery, the soft scrape of chairs, and I knew the whole room now looked at me as a burden, a shadow that didn't know when to leave. Amanda sat down, satisfied with her scene. Michael placed a hand on her back, his eyes glowing, oblivious to what was happening. My son was blind, and I was being shoved into the abyss of humiliation. That night, I couldn't remember the last song they played. I only remember stepping out of the club, the night wind whipping my face, and my heart feeling heavy as stone. I once thought a wedding was the beginning of a new family, but from the very first toast, I was erased from the picture. I was no longer a respected mother, just an aging woman, clinging to her child to survive. I swore, in that exact moment, that I would never forget those pitying eyes, and I swore that one day I would make Amanda, and everyone who applauded her, swallow their false smiles. The next morning, as I stepped into the kitchen, Amanda was already there with a legal officer, ready to remove me from my own home. The next morning, before sunlight could slip through the curtains, I heard the soft scrape of a chair from the kitchen. Years of habit make me wake early, but that day I knew immediately something was off. It wasn't Michael rummaging for coffee. It wasn't the neighbor's radio. It was a man's unfamiliar voice, blended with Amanda's syrupy laugh. I walked down the stairs. There, at the wooden table where I usually drink my tea, Amanda sat primly, her nightgown still scented with fabric softener. Beside her was a man in a gray suit so precise that every crease looked drawn with a ruler. On the table, instead of pancakes or a glass of milk, lay a thick stack of papers. "Good morning, Dorothy," Amanda beamed, though her eyes were sharp as a blade. "This is Mr. Patterson, a notary from Sterling Legal. We need to have a little talk." I pulled out a chair and sat, my hand wrapped around my coffee cup. I didn't care for their little silent play routine, but I didn't rush to speak either. In my own kitchen, I had become the audience to a performance they'd clearly rehearsed. Amanda tilted her head, her voice honeyed with a drop of poison. "Michael and I have been thinking a lot about your future. You've sacrificed so much. It's time you were properly cared for. We've put down a deposit for you at Sunrise Haven, a wonderful place with doctors, a library, friends your age. Sunrise Haven. A name that sounded gentle as daybreak, but to me, it felt like dusk. I knew instantly, this wasn't care. It was a polite way to lock me in a gilded cage. I asked slowly, "And why does this require paperwork and a notary?" Mr. Patterson adjusted his glasses, his tone as dry as a quarterly report. "Mrs. Harris, under this agreement, you would transfer full ownership of the house to Mr. and Mrs. Michael Harris. In exchange, Sunrise Haven will cover your first year of fees. After that, the family will reassess. This house, the one in both our names, the one I helped pay for, the one I'd bled $12,000 into for that wedding, was now being measured against exactly 1 year of care home fees. And after that year, what would I be? A shadow? An expired commodity?" Amanda blinked with well-practiced sympathy. I know this is hard to accept, but you've said you're afraid of living alone. I only want what's best for you. What's best for me? I almost laughed. A child could hear the calculation in that voice. I remembered the pitying looks from the wedding guests yesterday, so that saccharine speech had been stage setting. Amanda wanted to brand me a dependent, so anyone listening would believe I was helpless, useless, in need of management. Once the story had been sown into public ears, today's paperwork would be just the next step. I took a sip of coffee and kept my voice even. Where's Michael? Shouldn't he be present for this? Amanda smiled as if she'd rehearsed the line. He's at the gym. Michael isn't good with paperwork. I'll handle it. Of course. My son has always avoided confrontation. When he was 12 and wanted a bike, he wrote me a letter so he wouldn't have to meet my eyes. Now, at 42, he sends his wife to speak for him. Classic Michael. I set my cup down, the porcelain tapping the table. This is a major decision. I need time. Mr. Patterson brightened, nodding rapidly. Of course, Mrs. Harris. No one is forcing you. But Amanda leaned in, hand on the papers, her voice dropping, the steel unmistakable. Dorothy, it's best if you sign today. The sooner, the easier for everyone. I looked straight at her. In Amanda's eyes, I saw it clearly, the arrogant certainty that I was trapped, that a 68-year-old woman had no script except yes. I suppressed a smile. Perhaps she didn't know. I have survived worse. I was a widowed mother. I carried debt on my back. I worked night shifts until my bones ached so my son could stay in school. A woman who has survived all that is not undone by a white dress and a glossy stack of papers. I nodded lightly, my voice soft as velvet. All right, I'll think about it. Amanda's mouth twitched, but before she could speak, I added firmly, not today, not tomorrow. I'll sign when it makes sense to me. For now, I want some quiet. Mr. Patterson hurried the papers back into his case, like a man escaping quicksand. Amanda stayed frozen, her smile stiffening, her eyes darkening like the sky before a storm. They left the kitchen. I remained at the table, staring at the worn grain of the wood. Everything had snapped into focus. This wasn't concern for me. It was a plan to strip away the last asset I still held. I lifted my cup and finished the now cold coffee. In my mind, the pieces fell into place. Amanda had opened with her pious wedding speech. Now came the pressure to sign, and she wouldn't stop here. I smiled, this time without trembling, because Amanda had made the biggest mistake of all, believing I had only two choices, sign or be pushed aside. But I had another choice, a move she hadn't considered. Amanda had already started sowing the story that I'm forgetful, confused. What she didn't know was that I was writing down every word, every detail, and that little notebook would be the very thing that turns the board over. They say the forgetfulness of old age is like a quiet shadow that follows you. But in this house, I wasn't just given that shadow. I was turned into it. Amanda began planting little stories, seemingly harmless, but sharp as needles. One morning, she told Michael I'd left the gas on for a full hour, dangerous enough to burn the house down. I stayed silent, because that morning I hadn't touched the stove at all. I toasted bread in the toaster. I never turned a single gas knob. But Amanda told it with a worried voice and eyes brimming with tears, like an angel saving the family from disaster. Michael listened, frowned slightly, then turned to me. Mom, you have to be more careful. There's a pregnancy in the house. We can't afford mistakes. I wanted to argue, but his eyes slipped away, as if he wanted the conversation over. Michael has hated confrontation since he was a boy, and now, instead of looking for the truth, he chose the easiest path, believing his wife. A week later, Amanda whispered to friends, "Dorothy's getting forgetful. We planned lunch for Tuesday and she didn't remember until Wednesday." The table giggled, and I sat there swallowing the jolt of cold water. Because the truth was, Amanda had changed the plan. She called that morning to say she had a meeting and moved it to the next day. But when retelling it, she erased that detail, turning me into the confused one. And so, grain by grain, Amanda scattered her sand across the house. One day she reminded Michael, "Your mother left the keys in the door all night." Another day she murmured to the neighbor, "Seems like Dorothy's having trouble following the conversation, isn't she?" I heard those words, bit by bit, like steady drips on a winter roof. I knew what I needed to do. I didn't scream. I didn't beg Michael to believe me. I simply took out a blue hardcover notebook, the one Amanda assumed I used for recipes. I wrote everything down, dates, times, events, every word Amanda said, every detail that contradicted reality. March 15th. Amanda said I forgot to turn off the stove. Reality, I used the toaster, never touched the gas. March 22nd. Amanda canceled our lunch but retold it as me forgetting. April 3rd. Amanda said I struggle to follow conversations. Reality, she whispered. I had to ask her to speak up. Each line was a stitch, mending truth that had been cut apart. My hand trembled as I wrote, but the strokes were clean and sharp, because I knew I was building a wall, a rampart against a carefully engineered gaslighting campaign. Michael, my son, stayed at the edge, an audience to his wife's play. He looked at me like a hard math problem, and to avoid the headache, he chose the quick answer: believe Amanda. I saw it in the way he avoided my eyes, in the clipped texts. "Mom, maybe Amanda is right. Please take care." Each word cut. Some nights I lay in my empty room, listening to the couple's laughter downstairs, and I felt like a temporary lodger, a shadow waiting to be erased. But I don't break easily. I stayed up many nights working graveyard shifts so Michael could pay tuition. I rebuilt a family from nothing after my husband died. A woman who has lived through all that will not let a 30-year-old girl turn her into the senile mother. Every morning, I opened the blue notebook and read each line back to myself to remember that my mind was intact. I am not crazy, not forgetful, not confused. It is Amanda weaving a net, and she thinks I'll get tangled in it. But I'm holding each thread, waiting for the day I pull the whole thing down. Once Amanda smirked when she saw me writing. "What are you jotting down? A little old lady diary?" I looked up and smiled. A diary. Old people forget, you know. We have to write things down." She laughed and turned away, not realizing that answer was the perfect cover. I caught the contempt in her eyes, that smug confidence that she'd already won. But I knew the game was far from over. Amanda believes I'm weak, believes Michael will always take her side, believes the whole world will see me as a doddering old woman. But she forgets one thing. I've been Michael's mother for 42 years. I know his nature, his habits, his soft spots better than anyone. And more importantly, I've learned how to wait. Another morning I made pancakes like always, but this time the table would be set with more than butter and syrup. There would be bitter words too, words that would rip Amanda's mask clean off. That morning I woke earlier than usual. The Charleston sky was gloomy, gray clouds hanging like a curtain about to spill rain. I decided to make pancakes, the dish I've made for Michael since he was in grade school. The smell of flour, melting butter, and syrup spread through the kitchen. The pan sizzled, reminding me there are still things in life I can control. Amanda appeared in a silk robe, hair tied neatly as if she'd just stepped out of a magazine. She took a breath and gave a thin smile. "Smells wonderful, Dorothy. I wonder how much longer you'll be able to keep up this little habit." I set a plate of pancakes in front of her and answered evenly, "Longer than you think, Amanda." She sat down and cut tidy, delicate pieces, as if performing a ritual. Then, over steaming pancakes, Amanda began her familiar kindness. "Mother, Sunrise Haven isn't so bad. There are activities, friends your age. You won't have to worry about safety or those little lapses anymore." I sipped my coffee, let a few seconds pass, then looked up. "Specifically, what have I forgotten? What event proves I'm unsafe?" Amanda hesitated. For the first time, I saw her smile falter. But she quickly recovered. "Well, the day you left the gas on, and the lunch date you mixed up, and plenty of other things. Michael's worried." I smiled, then slowly pulled a blue hardcover notebook from the drawer. I set it in front of her, flipped through page by page, and read aloud, each word slicing through her glossy veneer. March 15th. Amanda says I forgot to turn off the stove. Reality, I used the toaster, never touched the gas. March 22nd. Amanda says I mixed up our lunch date. Reality, she changed the time, then told others I forgot. April 3rd. Amanda says I struggle to follow conversations. Reality, she whispered. I asked her to speak up. Each line sounded in the quiet kitchen like an alarm bell. Amanda went rigid, her smile cracking like wax under heat. I continued steady and calm. Truth does its own heavy lifting. April 18th. Amanda told the neighbor I mixed up the day. Reality, I had the flu, and asked whether it was Tuesday or Wednesday. She left that part out. Amanda set down her knife and fork. Fingers whitened from the grip. The sparkly, dutiful bride gaze was gone. In its place, a flat, dark stare. Cold steel, exposed and calculating. I closed the notebook and left it on the table. "You see, Amanda, my memory is good enough to write everything down, and my mind is clear enough to know who's crafting a narrative about my forgetfulness." The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the wall clock ticking. Amanda stared at me for a long moment, the smile completely gone. For the first time, her real face showed. No sugar, only blade. I swallowed the last bite of cold pancake, took a sip of coffee and said softly, but loud enough for that blade to hear, "Don't mistake silence for ignorance. I can wait, and I will wait for the day you trip over your own game." Amanda wouldn't accept being cornered. She shifted to a sharper play, going after the bond between mother and son, pushing Michael to see me as a selfish manipulator who's controlled his life. When she was unmasked at the breakfast table, Amanda could no longer play the sweet daughter-in-law. The mask cracked, revealing her real face. Cold, venomous, and simmering with hate. She let out a thin laugh, dry and brittle, like a shard of mirror crunching underfoot. "Dorothy," Amanda lowered her voice, each word a needle. "You've kept your son imprisoned his whole life. You're selfish. You invent excuses so he never leaves you. Even your illnesses are just a script to drag Michael back." The accusation sliced straight into my heart. There was a sliver of truth in it, which only made it hurt more. Yes, after my husband died, I leaned on Michael more than before. I was afraid of being completely alone. But does that mean I faked being sick? That I staged everything to keep my son by my side? I drew a long breath and let the pain settle, because I knew when an enemy starts striking at your love, it means their first schemes are shaking. Amanda couldn't win with truth, so she chose to dig into my wounds. I stood and walked slowly to the wooden cabinet where I keep important papers. Amanda followed me with her eyes, tense. I slid open a drawer and took out a file packet bound with a rubber band. "You can call me selfish, weak. You can even invent illnesses for me," I said, setting the file on the table. "But there are things you can't deny." I opened the papers one by one. A $12,000 loan agreement, signed by Michael, confirming it's a loan to be repaid. The house deed, with my name alongside my son's. And most importantly, the power of attorney clause, stating clearly that it only takes effect if 2 independent physicians declare me incapacitated. Amanda went rigid. Each document I laid down was another brick, building a wall between her and my assets, and my life. I looked straight at her, my voice calm but razor-edged. "You think I'm naive enough to sign a blank power of attorney? You think I don't know the law?" I raised Michael in a country where every signature matters. And I, Amanda, I have never signed without reading. Amanda said nothing, lips pressed thin. I knew she was recalculating, searching for another exit, and I knew people like her don't surrender over a few sheets of paper. That evening, as I passed the living room, I saw Amanda hunched over her phone, whispering to Michael. I stopped behind the wall and caught fragments. "Yeah, she's making things difficult. Can't keep living like this. We need to handle the Dorothy problems." I held my breath. Those 3 words, the Dorothy problem, sent an icy line down my spine. To her, I was no longer a mother-in-law, no longer the woman who paid for their wedding, no longer the one who raised Michael. I was just a problem to be managed. I slipped back to my room, hands trembling, mind clearer than ever. I opened my old laptop and pulled up Michael's email. My guess was right. There, in a private thread between husband and wife, was the line Amanda had just let slip. "We need to handle the Dorothy problem before she causes issues with refinancing." I sat frozen for a long time. There was no doubt now. This wasn't about mother and son. It wasn't about family misunderstandings. This was a deliberate scheme, a laid-out plan to erase me from the picture, to turn me into the past. I closed my eyes, sharp pain flaring, then opened them to something else, a cool, steady clarity. If Amanda saw me as a problem, then I would become the biggest problem she'd ever faced. Amanda brought the notary back, this time to finish the job. But she didn't know I'd prepared an entirely different hand, and the one straddling the line between legal and criminal would pay the highest price. That afternoon, I heard an unfamiliar car stop at the gate. I didn't need to look to know Amanda was back with her favorite chess piece, the notary in the gray suit. I sat upright in the living room, a steaming teacup on the table, waiting for them to walk in as if I were expecting a play to be performed again. Amanda opened the door, her smile bright and false. "Dorothy, we're going to wrap this up today. Mr. Patterson has all the paperwork. You just need to sign." The notary nodded, set down his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. His eyes looked tired, like a man used to family squabbles. Yet he hadn't realized he was about to be dragged into a dangerous bog. I lifted the stack from his hands, flipped through each page, pretending to study them. Then I let them fall back to the table, light as a card I'd already seen coming. "Interesting," I said slowly. "You want me to sign over full ownership of the house to you too. In exchange, I get a year at Sunrise Haven. After that, I'm on my own?" Amanda didn't blink. "You'll love it there. Safe, comfortable. Michael will have peace of mind." I looked straight at the notary. Mr. Patterson, are you aware this is jointly owned property? The deed clearly lists both my name and my son's. He hesitated. Amanda jumped in. That doesn't matter. As long as my mother signs, it's legal. I gave a thin smile. Legal? You've forgotten a few details. I stood, went to a drawer, and took out another file. I laid each sheet on the table like chess pieces set for checkmate. First sheet. A $12,000 loan agreement signed by Michael. Not a gift. A loan. Repayable. Second. The house deed. Joint ownership, Michael and me. Without my signature, you can't refinance, and you certainly can't sell. Third. A medical report from Dr. Sarah Chen, confirming I'm fully competent, no cognitive decline, which means that power of attorney you thought you had in your pocket is null. Amanda went rigid. Mr. Patterson looked at me, then at the papers, his face draining of color. I tilted my head, my voice soft as a breeze but sharper than a blade. And one more thing. This morning I called Detective Rodriguez from the Elder Abuse Unit. He's very interested in families who accidentally pressure seniors to sign away assets. The notary straightened in an instant, his voice cracking. Mrs. Harris, I had no idea. I was told this was a voluntary agreement. I held his gaze. Good thing you didn't get my signature, otherwise you might have become an accessory. You understand the consequences, don't you? Sweat beaded on Mr. Patterson's forehead. He hurried the documents back into his case, hands shaking like a man who'd just touched fire. Amanda, by contrast, sat still, her smile gone. For the first time, I saw fear slip between her calculations. I crossed my arms, leaned back in the chair, and concluded slowly, no one forces me to give up my home. No one sends me to a nursing facility unless I choose it. And if there's a next time, Amanda, our conversation will happen in an interrogation room, not this living room. Mr. Patterson practically fled, apologizing and promising to review the entire process. The door closed, and the room held only me and Amanda. She sat there, eyes red, lips trembling. Then, unexpectedly, she burst into tears. The arrogance was gone. The poise stripped away. Only a young woman remained, mascara running, voice breaking. You don't understand. We need the money. Amanda wouldn't stop at tears. When legal gambits fail, she turns to a more dangerous weapon, cutting into the bond between mother and son, pushing Michael to become my judge. That afternoon, Michael came home. The door opened with a soft click, then shut with a heavy thud, as if he were carrying the weight of the world. I was on the sofa, warm lamplight falling over the papers spread across the table. Michael walked in with a wrinkled shirt and a loosened tie. His face was gaunt, his eyes bloodshot, like a child who'd lost his way. "Mom," he whispered, his voice shaking like wind through a cracked window. "Mom, I'm sorry." I looked at him, my heart tight and strangely cold. The 42-year-old man before me was still the little boy I once held in my arms, and yet now he was the one trying to push me into a nursing home for the sake of a peaceful marriage. I didn't cry. I asked, my voice hoarse but sharp as a blade, "Are you really going to turn your mother into a burden to secure your marital bliss?" Michael lowered his head, shoulders trembling. Tears fell into his hands, heavy as stones. "I didn't know what to do, Mom. Amanda, she kept saying you were forgetting things. She told me something terrible would happen if we didn't deal with it. I believed her." I sat still, each word landing like a hammer. "Believed? Or did you choose the easiest way out?" He looked up, eyes red. "Mom," I cut him off. "All your life, when trouble comes, you take the shortcut. When you were 12 and wanted a bike, you wrote me a letter so you wouldn't have to look me in the eye. At 17, when you crashed the car, you had your girlfriend call for you. And now, at 42, You let your wife decide your mother's fate. Do you call that love or just avoidance? Michael broke down, tears streaking his face, shame he couldn't hide. I'm weak, Mom. I know. I just wanted peace. I thought if you signed the papers, everything would be fine. Fine. I gave a bitter laugh. Fine for whom? For your wife? For the house? And what about me? The woman who broke her back on night shifts to raise you? Who put in money so you could have a grand wedding? You think I can be erased that easily? Michael clutched his head and shook it hard. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm truly sorry. In that moment, my chest ached so fiercely I could hardly breathe. I wanted to hold my son and tell him I forgave him. But another part of me was ice, reminding me that love can't overwrite the truth. He had chosen wrong, not just once, but over and over, and every time he chose easy instead of right. I drew a steady breath. Michael, you need to learn how to be a man, not a child hiding behind his wife. If you keep living like this, you'll lose your mother and yourself. He said nothing, only choked on his sobs. I looked at him, heart twisting, then made my decision. I'm leaving this house tomorrow. Michael's head snapped up, horrified. Mom, no. You don't have to go. We can fix this. I can't live under a roof where I'm treated as a problem to be solved. If you want to keep this marriage, then face the truth on your own. As for me, I'll take care of myself just like I always have. He burst into louder tears. But I knew the decision was set. I'd lived too long in the shadow of manipulation. It was time to step out, no matter how cold the road ahead. I stood, gathered the papers into my bag. Before heading upstairs, I paused and looked at Michael one more time. You think I'm alone, Michael? You're wrong. I still have one ace left, and your wife is about to learn what it means to reap what she's sown. Michael froze, confused, but I knew exactly what I'd done. I'd made a phone call that afternoon to the last person Amanda would expect, her own mother. When Mrs. Patricia Winters, Amanda's mother, walked in, the truth of her daughter's dark past would come to light. And then, the board would flip completely. 3 weeks after I left that house, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and standing on the porch of my little home was an elegant woman with neatly pinned gray hair, holding a thick envelope. Her eyes were sorrowful but steady. Mrs. Harris. Her voice trembled. I'm Patricia Winters, Amanda's mother. I invited her in. She placed the envelope on the wooden table and gently slid it toward me. $12,000. You shouldn't have to bear this loss. I'm paying it back on my daughter's behalf. I was stunned. You don't have to do this. It isn't your responsibility. Patricia exhaled, her gaze dropping to the floor as if to avoid the light. Yes, it is. I have to admit something. Amanda has been involved in questionable things. In college, she stole a roommate's credit card. We hired a lawyer to hush it up. Later, in her first marriage, she was caught withdrawing money from her ex-father-in-law's account. Again, we covered it up. I kept thinking she'd change. But clearly, Amanda only became more sophisticated. Every word drove another nail into the coffin of the faith I'd tried to hold on to, so I wasn't the first victim. And if I'd stayed silent, I certainly wouldn't have been the last. That night, I called Detective Rodriguez. His voice was firm. You did the right thing. What you've provided is enough to open a formal case. This is elder abuse, and the law will stand with you. A few days later, the police moved in. Amanda was handcuffed on her front steps, designer dress and all, unable to cover her real face anymore. She screamed, "This is that old woman's fault. This is Dorothy's revenge." But this time, no one believed the tears. Michael called me, voice choked. "Mom, they arrested her. I couldn't stop it." I answered slowly, "Michael, this isn't about whether you could stop it. This is justice." A month later, Michael filed for divorce. For the first time in his life, I saw him truly grow up, willing to face things, willing to admit he'd chosen wrong. The court awarded custody of baby Emma to Michael. Amanda became nothing more than a name in a criminal file. The first time Michael brought Emma over and placed her in my arms, my hands trembled. Her round eyes looked at me without a hint of judgment. I whispered into her ear, "Sweetheart, a real family isn't the people who take from you. It's the people who choose to stay." In that moment, all the pain, humiliation, and betrayal turned to ash. And from that ash, I found something more precious than anything: integrity. But life doesn't end neatly like a fairy tale. One morning, the mail carrier delivered an envelope from the county jail. The handwriting was shaky, messy, yet unmistakable. "Dorothy, please read this, just this once." The story seemed finished, but that letter might open a new chapter. What did Amanda write from behind bars? A confession? Or another scheme waiting to be set loose? If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.